Imagine the government desperately wants to pass a highly controversial law, but they know the upper house of parliament is just going to block it.
Right.
What if there was a constitutional loophole, like a VIP lane, so to speak, that allowed them to bypass the opposition entirely?
Which is a pretty wild scenario to think about.
Exactly. And today, we're actually looking at how that exact scenario is playing out in real time. So if you're, lacing up your shoes for a morning run or sitting at your desk with that first cup of coffee, welcome. This is your morning deep dive, curated specifically for the dedicated UPSC aspirant.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of ground to cover. We are unpacking a massive collation of articles from today's daily news analysis dated August 6th, 2026.
Well, it's a heavy one today.
It really is. This includes critical editorials and reports from The Hindu, The Indian Express, and the PIB. So our mission is basically to extract the exact mechanisms and insights that you need for GS Papers 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, to set the stage for all of this, let's look at a quote from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. It's one you should absolutely keep in your back pocket for a GS Paper 2 or maybe an essay introduction.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, it's great. He said, "The Constitution is not a mere lawyer's document. It is a vehicle of life, and its spirit is always the spirit of age."
It's just brilliant framing for today.
Yeah.
Because it really forces us to ask, how is the spirit of the age currently utilizing the mechanics of the Constitution?
Right. And let's test that right now with our first topic. So the Rajya Sabha just passed the Supreme Court Number of Judges Amendment Bill 2026.
Right.
On paper, it's pretty simple. It increases the sanctioned strength of the Supreme Court from 34 to 38 judges, and that includes the Chief Justice of India.
Yeah, just adding 4 judges.
Right, but the controversy isn't about the number of judges at all. It's about how the bill was passed.
Yeah.
The government pushed this through using the money bill route. And let me just stop right there because adding judges is a judicial matter.
Exactly.
How on earth does that qualify as a money bill?
Well, that is the multi-million rupee question right there. To understand this, we really have to look at Article 110 of the Constitution, which defines what a money bill is. It's supposed to deal strictly with financial matters, like taxation or government expenditure that's drawn from the Consolidated Fund of India.
Right, money stuff.
Exactly. So the government's core argument here is that, adding 4 new judges requires money, specifically an estimated recurring expenditure of about 10.57 crore rupees per annum, plus a non-recurring expenditure of 3.47 crore. And because that salary and infrastructure money comes directly from the Consolidated Fund, they're arguing the entire bill can be classified as a money bill.
Wow. But I mean, the implications of that classification are just massive for parliamentary democracy, right?
It's huge.
Because if we go back to that VIP lane analogy, passing something as a money bill effectively neuters the Rajya Sabha.
It does. The upper house can only make recommendations.
And they only have 14 days to do it, right?
Sure. Exactly, 14 days. And the Lok Sabha can just completely ignore those recommendations. The Rajya Sabha cannot reject the bill.
So by attaching a relatively small expenditure to a major structural change, the government is essentially bypassing the upper house's veto power altogether.
Which is why this is such a critical topic for any questions on parliamentary oversight. And, this isn't an isolated incident.
Right.
The constitutionality of using the money bill route for non-financial legislation is actually pending before a 7-judge constitution bench at the Supreme Court right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we saw this exact same tactic used for the Aadhaar Act and the Prevention of Money Laundering Act amendments.
I remember that. I remember Justice D.Y. Chandrachud writing this really scorching dissenting opinion on the 2018 Aadhaar ruling about this exact tactic.
Yeah, he did.
He called passing it as a money bill a fraud on the Constitution and a subterfuge.
He didn't hold back. And when that 7-judge bench finally delivers its verdict, it will fundamentally alter the balance of power between the 2 houses of parliament.
Definitely. Now, while we are examining how laws are being drafted and debated, there are 3 other bills from today's analysis that really highlight the tension between state control and citizen rights.
All right, let's get into those.
First up, the Foreign Contribution Regulation Amendment Bill, 2026. And the government is actually softening its stance here.
Which is surprising.
Right. Originally, civil society groups were completely panicked because of a retrospective provision. Like, if an NGO's FCRA certificate ceased, Any assets created with foreign funds in the past could suddenly vest in a government-designated authority.
Yeah, that was a huge concern.
But the government is now assuring the opposition that the law will not apply retrospectively.
And that concession is vital for legal stability. I mean, retrospective application is terrifying for any sector because it just erases all predictability.
Right.
Imagine, like, a rural hospital that was built with foreign donations 20 years ago suddenly being seized by the state today just because a minor registration lapsed. I mean, it would paralyze the nonprofit sector.
Absolutely. But contrast that concession with the Banker's Books Evidence Bill 2026, which just passed the Lok Sabha via voice vote amid, like, a massive opposition din.
Yeah, a lot of noise on that one.
It replaces an 1891 colonial act to legalize digital, virtual, and cloud-based bank records as evidence, which, modernizing the law makes total sense.
Sure.
But the bill allows an investigative officer, specifically a superintendent of police or above, to access these bank records without a court order. Hold on. An SP-level officer digging through personal financial records in the cloud without a warrant? That sounds like a surveillance nightmare.
It's the textbook clash between state security and the fundamental right to privacy.
Okay.
The government argues that the speed of modern financial crimes, like instant crypto laundering, it requires investigative agility. And a slow warrant process just obstructs that.
I mean, I get that, but...
But civil liberties advocates counter that bypassing judicial oversight for financial surveillance violates the proportionality test laid out in the Puttaswamy privacy judgment.
All right, the Puttaswamy judgment is key there. Then we have the Indian Statistical Institute Bill 2026, which is actually sparking protests from its own faculty.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
The bill proposes a new board of governors and introduces a visitor role, which is likely going to be the president of India. And faculty members are arguing this just destroys their academic autonomy.
It's a recurring theme in higher education governance, honestly. Introducing a visitor centralizes control.
Yeah.
So it allows the central government to dictate appointments and, potentially influence the direction of statistical research.
Right.
And for an institute that produces the foundational data for our national economic policies, academic independence is just paramount.
Speaking of the national economy, let's transition to how the state actually manages its finances, which brings us straight into GS Paper 3.
Yes.
The Reserve Bank of India's Monetary Policy Committee unanimously decided to hold the key policy repo rate at 5.25%. They're sticking to a neutral policy stance.
Okay.
India's growth forecast was bumped up to 6.7%, and the inflation target was actually lowered to 5%. So wait, if the growth forecast is up and the inflation target is down, why is the RBI holding steady? Why not drop rates right now to make borrowing cheaper and fuel even more growth?
That's a great question. It's because the global and domestic environment is still incredibly fragile, and a neutral stance gives the RBI maximum flexibility.
Okay.
They aren't committing to tightening or easing the money supply. Globally, geopolitical tensions in West Asia mean crude oil prices could spike at literally any moment, which imports inflation directly into India.
Right, we've seen that before.
And domestically, the RBI is staring down the barrel of unpredictable weather patterns.
I mean, El Nino.
Exactly.
But how does warming water in the Pacific Ocean actually dictate the interest rate on my car loan in Delhi? I think people struggle with that connection.
It's a fascinating chain reaction, really. So El Nino involves unusual warming of the eastern tropical Pacific Ocean. And that warming shifts global atmospheric circulation, which historically suppresses the southwest monsoon over India.
Right, less rain.
Exactly. A weak monsoon devastates our rain-fed agriculture. Crop yields plummet, which then causes a spike in the prices of vegetables, pulses, and cereals.
Oh, I see.
And food makes up nearly half of India's consumer price index basket. So if the RBI lowers interest rates now, making money cheap, and then a failed monsoon spikes food prices, we could see runaway inflation.
So it's a preemptive measure.
Yeah, they're holding at 5.25% to keep a lid on demand until they're absolutely certain the monsoon will deliver.
The mechanics of that are just incredible.
Yeah.
Here's another mechanism changing our economy, this time through material science.
Oh, right.
The RBI is targeting 2027-28 to launch durable polymer plastic banknotes, starting with the 10 and 20 rupee denominations.
Yeah, because paper notes, especially in lower denominations, they circulate so rapidly that they just become soiled and torn within months.
Oh yeah, those 10 rupee notes get destroyed.
Exactly. And it costs hundreds of crores to constantly print replacements. Polymer notes don't absorb moisture, sweat, or dirt. They last like 2 to 4 times longer.
Wow.
And Bharatiya Reserve Bank Note Mudran Private Limited has actually already issued global tenders for the polymer sheets.
That's a huge shift. Okay, let's scale up from 10 rupee notes to the macro architecture of India's finances. The 16th Finance Commission, which is chaired by Arvind Panagaria, just submitted its report for the 2026 to 2031 period.
This is a big one.
Yeah. They maintain vertical devolution, which is the share of central taxes going to states at 41%.
Right.
But they slashed grants and aid down to 9.47 lakh crore. That is a massive drop from the 10.1 lakh crore that was recommended by the previous commission.
It really is.
Wait, having the grants and aid sounds like a complete disaster for state welfare. Like, if you're sitting in a state like Kerala or Tamil Nadu right now, how do you fund your localized projects? How can the Finance Commission justify choking state funds like that?
Look, this is perhaps the most heated debate in fiscal federalism today. You really have to look at the underlying philosophy of the Finance Commission here.
Okay.
The overall quantum of assured transfer through discretionary grants has shrunk, yes, but the proponents of this cut argue it's a necessary tough love measure.
Tough love.
Yeah. By choking the discretionary grants, the center is basically trying to force states to improve their own internal tax collection efficiency. And, frankly, forces them to stop spending money on unsustainable populist freebies just to win elections.
Oh, I see. But the states must be furious.
Oh, they are, because the counter-argument from the states is that vertical devolution is a very rigid formula. It's based on population and income distance.
Right.
Grants and aid were the flexible funds they actually used to target specific localized issues, like, say, a unique health crisis in a specific district.
That makes sense.
Yeah. They argue that since states do all the heavy lifting of actual on-the-ground governance delivery, starving them of flexible capital directly harms the most vulnerable citizens. So it's a fundamental re-engineering of how money flows in this country.
Wow, okay. And as government funding shifts, private money is apparently stepping up.
Yes, this is an interesting data point.
An editorial today highlights that for the very first time, private industry research and development spending has surpassed government spending. In 2023-24, private R&D hit 51.8% of national research spending.
That's huge.
Led by transport, pharma, and IT. I mean, if you're writing a mains answer on Make in India or innovation, definitely circle that 51.8% figure.
Absolutely. It represents a real structural maturity in the Indian economy. For decades, we just relied on imported tech or government labs, like the DRDO or CSIR for innovation.
Right. The government did all the heavy lifting.
Exactly. Private capital taking the lead means Indian corporations are finally investing in creating their own proprietary intellectual property.
So we've talked about grand economic structures. But how do these policies actually manifest on the ground?
Good question.
Let's look at GS1 society and GS2 social justice. The Supreme Court recently extended criminal law protections against domestic cruelty to women and live-in relationships that are, quote, in the nature of marriage.
Right.
They applied Section 498A of the erstwhile IPC and its equivalent, Section 85 of the new Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita.
The key mechanism here is that phrase, in the nature of marriage.
Okay.
The court is essentially acknowledging that societal structures have evolved a lot faster than the written law. If a couple has a genuine intent to marry and lives together, the woman shouldn't be denied protection from cruelty simply because she lacks a formal marriage certificate.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, it closes a massive loophole in social justice.
It's all about recognizing unseen realities, right? Along those same lines, NITI Aayog just released a report titled Reimagining Care. Strategies for Empowering Caregivers in Viksit Bharat at 2047. They are proposing a national policy on caregiving.
This is so important. We often focus just on the formal economy, manufacturing, IT, finance.
Right.
But caregiving is like the shock absorbers of a vehicle. It takes all the societal bumps, caring for the elderly, the sick, children, so the formal economy can actually keep driving smoothly.
That's a great way to put it.
Yet it's entirely unpaid and mostly falls on women. By proposing a national policy, Aayog wants to professionalize this sector, providing institutional support and finally recognizing it as highly skilled labor.
Let's test this gap between policy and ground reality with perhaps the most complex case study we have right now, which is Jammu and Kashmir.
Right.
It has been exactly 7 years since the abrogation of Article 370 and Article 35A on August 5, 2019. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi marked the anniversary by stating that lives in J&K and Ladakh have been completely transformed by growing opportunities.
Okay.
But the collation of data in today's sources reveals a starkly different statistical reality.
Yeah, and as future administrators, you really have to analyze the objective data provided by state institutions. So, the Controller and Auditor General of India, the CAG, reported that J&K's economy actually contracted in the 2019-20 and 2020-21 periods, and growth dropped sharply again in 2024-25.
Wow, contracted.
Yeah. Crucially, the CAG noted that capital outlay for J&K, so the money spent on creating long-term assets like infrastructure, contracted in the 2 years immediately following the abrogation.
And what about the human capital? Like, does the education and labor data reflect that political narrative of transformation?
Well, according to the sources, it paints a pretty challenging picture. The All India Survey on Higher Education reports that the gross enrollment ratio in higher education actually declined in both 2022-23 and 2023-24. Furthermore, the Periodic Labor Force Survey indicates that female unemployment has been rising.
And the sources also point to a severe tightening of civil liberties.
Yes.
Cases registered under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, the UAPA, and the number of under trials has sharply increased over these 7 years. Internationally, the Freedom House score for civil liberties in the region has plummeted. And overarching all of this is the fact that the core political promise of restoring statehood still remains unfulfilled.
Exactly. And when you're analyzing J&K for the UPSC, you must be able to present this dichotomy. Hold the government's stated objectives in one hand and the empirical data from bodies like the CAG and the PLFS in the other.
This friction between what is promised on paper and what happens in reality is a defining feature of Indian governance.
It really is.
Look at this detail from today. The center just sent a proposal to the Finance Ministry for an umbrella scheme for nationwide police modernization.
Okay, why?
Because the Supreme Court had to take suo motu cognizance of the fact that CCTV cameras in police stations are largely non-functional.
Oh, wow.
It's wild. We were implementing AI in grievance portals, but the Supreme Court has to step in because the cameras meant to prevent custodial violence are literally broken.
It's the ultimate governance gap. Article 21 guarantees the right to life and personal liberty. Supreme Court guidelines mandate CCTVs in police stations specifically to protect that right during interrogations. When those cameras are non-functional, the constitutional protection just evaporates.
Right, it's just words on paper then.
Exactly. And police falls under the state list, meaning state governments are responsible for funding this. So the center stepping in with a modernization scheme is basically an attempt to enforce a baseline of constitutional infrastructure across all states.
Fascinating.
Mm.
Okay, let's pan out to the international stage, GS2 International Relations and GS3 Environment. Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri just met with Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayake.
Okay.
India extended a $350 million line of credit for railway and livestock projects. But the real meat of the meeting was India pushing for the implementation of the 13th Amendment and fast-tracking the Sri Lanka Unique Digital Identity Project.
Yeah, the 13th Amendment is the geopolitical anchor here.
Oh.
Well, it was passed in 1987 after the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord, and it created provincial councils to devolve political power, specifically to address the marginalization of the Tamil minority in the north and east.
Right. Okay.
But successive Sri Lankan governments have stalled its full implementation. So India constantly leverages its economic aid to push for this devolution.
Oh, I see.
Meanwhile, exporting our digital public infrastructure, like the Unique Digital Identity Project, is just a masterclass in modern soft power. It embeds Indian technological architecture deep into the administrative framework of our neighbors.
That's incredibly smart diplomacy. Moving to our northern border, there's an editorial exploring a low-risk pathway for cooperation between India and China.
Interesting.
We all know about the military friction along the line of actual control. But a recent Chinese delegation visit to New Delhi suggests that climate resilience and disaster mitigation could be a back channel to rebuild trust. Why climate?
Because extreme weather doesn't respect border disputes.
Right.
Both nations are getting battered by unprecedented heat waves and glacial floods. If Indian and Chinese scientists can collaborate on early warning systems for Himalayan floods or create blended finance models for urban resilience, it opens a really pragmatic diplomatic channel.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It builds institutional trust in a non-military, totally low-risk arena.
It's a brilliant pivot, honestly. Now, for the environment and biodiversity section, there are two crucial updates for prelims.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, the Asiatic lion. The only free-ranging population is in Gujarat's Gir National Park, which has actually grown to 891 individuals.
That's great news.
It is. But a proposal to divert 75 hectares of reserved forest for limestone mining in the Bharat area is threatening a vital movement corridor. So how critical is a movement corridor for a population of 891?
It is the difference between survival and extinction.
Wait, right?
Yes. If you mine that corridor and isolate the lions into fragmented pockets, you completely destroy their genetic diversity.
I see.
Inbreeding makes them highly susceptible to disease. We saw this with the canine distemper virus outbreak just a few years ago. Mining in a corridor isn't just about losing trees, it's about cutting off the genetic lifeblood of the entire species.
Okay, that's a major red flag. And over in the Northeast, Meghalaya just launched Mission Clouded Leopard to protect its state animal through habitat restoration. So definitely note that the clouded leopard is the state animal of Meghalaya for those who match the following questions.
Absolutely write that down.
Now let's hit our rapid-fire prelims pointers to close out the syllabus. I'm just going to fire these off.
Ready.
Number 1, space. The Gaganyaan crewed flight is targeted for 2027, and the Bharatya Antariksh Station is slated for 2035 with a 20,000 crore budget.
It moves.
Number 2, Iran and Oman are jointly managing a new shipping route through the highly strategic Strait of Hormuz.
Crucial choke point there.
Number 3, governance tech. The National Education Policy 2020 introduces an AI curriculum for classes 3 through 8. Mission Karmayogi's IGOT platform now links to civil servants' annual appraisals. And the CP Dreams portal launched an AI chatbot named Samadhan Bidi.
Right, and Samadhan Didi is vital because it uses multilingual AI to parse citizens' grievances, categorize them instantly, and route them to the correct department.
That sounds efficient.
It is. It cuts redressal times down to an ambitious 21 days. It completely removes the bureaucratic friction of translation and routing.
Amazing. Number 4, science. Researchers from INST Mohali and BCARS Mumbai developed light-activated nanobots for targeted breast cancer therapy. Wait, how does light activate a nanobot inside the body?
They use near-infrared light.
Infrared.
Yeah, unlike visible light, near-infrared can safely penetrate human tissue. So when it hits these specific nanobots, they absorb the light, heat up, and precisely destroy the tumor cells they're attached to.
Wow.
And it leaves the surrounding healthy tissue completely unharmed.
That is incredible. Finally, number 5, agriculture. White Revolution 2.0. The new focus is on circularity in the dairy sector.
Right, and circularity means moving away from a linear model of just extracting milk.
Right.
It's about treating dairy waste manure as an asset, processing it into biogas for energy and organic fertilizer, which creates a closed-loop system that boosts farmer income and reduces the environmental impact.
Phew. That was a truly massive deep dive.
It really was.
We started with the constitutional loopholes of the money bill route, unraveled the RBI's battle against El Nino-driven inflation, debated the drastic cuts in state grants by the 16th Finance Commission, analyzed the complex statistical reality of Jammu and Kashmir, and explored how we are using digital ID and climate change as diplomatic tools.
You've covered the underlying mechanisms of today's most crucial news. When you are structuring your mains answers today, really focus on those connections.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over while you study.
Let's hear it.
We watched the RBI tweak repo rates to manage the macroeconomy, and we saw NITI Aayog finally acknowledge the invisible, unpaid labor of caregiving. As future administrators, ask yourselves, how should a modern state measure true progress? Is it strictly through GDP figures and rapid digital rollouts, or is it measured by the well-being of its most vulnerable citizens, the functionality of basic infrastructure like a police station camera, and the preservation of fragile ecosystems?
That's the real question.
Remember Dr. Ambedkar's words, the Constitution is a vehicle of life. Ensure your answers reflect that life. Have a highly productive day of studying. Remember that consistency is key, and we will see you on the next deep dive.